The seniors are looking young too.
He's getting old, dude.
I know,
Or
as we get older,
older.
thank you.
Sir?
I don't know, Rob.
Better
You tell
older
us when
than
we're ready.
That's right.
That's
It
my policy.
started,
That's
let me
right.
see if it's live. No, we're good.
We good? All right, call the meeting to order. We stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. All right. Mr. Meinke, awards, recognitions, and celebrations.
It's a busy time of the year. It's an exciting time of the year. We've had, as many of you know, this week we had an awards ceremony for the seniors on Monday. We have an awards ceremony. We've had multiple awards ceremonies for our fifth graders. Tonight is actually the fifth graders out at Elms. They're having their graduation at the PAC tonight. We have had a number of celebrations around the district. We have graduation coming up this Sunday, and obviously the academy graduation on Friday. So lots of things going on this week in the district. But I would say just exciting to celebrate the year that we had and our students who are leaving us and those that are making transitions, big turning points in their lives. So we're excited to see them accomplish what they did this year. So lots to be excited about from this school year, and that's kind of the season that we're in this week.
Yes.
So
Lots to celebrate. So I learned today that we have 57 people who will be graduating or earning their GED in the academy.
correct, yep, on
That's
Friday.
exciting.
And we also just learned yesterday that Gaines Elementary won an award for being a Heart Healthy School award. They've done a lot of work for safety and health, and they have actually earned this award from the state, so we'll be getting more information on that. So there are just some people doing some really great things around the district right now.
Okay. All right, we have before us a consent agenda. We need a motion to approve.
So move, support.
Mike, Brian, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, back to you, Ben.
Okay, couple items. It's been a month or two since I've done a legislative update, and so as you know, we try and track some of these bills that are out there. I think I have enough to go around. There we go. So, a couple hot button issues in Lansing going on right now, and just so I know you probably all are aware of this, but the legislators take a recess and they go on break as well in the summertime. And so this is the time of year where a lot of things are getting thrown through. They're getting called, they pass legislation here. It's called lame duck. And there are people who are, outgoing members or term limited. And so a lot of things are getting thrown in at the last minute. So there's a lot of activity right now. There's a couple topics that I'd like to bring you up to speed on so that you're aware. We do have a couple bills that are addressing the budgeting process. Right now, there's a bill that just kind of snuck in there that deals with gross tax revenue and net tax revenue and making a switch, which would be an accounting fix according to the governor. That would have a large impact on the school aid fund. So that has been brought up the last few years. That's something that would definitely change drastically the revenues in the school aid fund. So that's something that we're watching. But we are hearing from the House and Senate fiscal agencies that our per pupil foundation allowance funding stands to see a significant increase, as the governor's promised. Both of the chambers of the legislature have also indicated that they would follow suit with that, but they do have some different pieces. Right now, there is a large, I don't want to say large, but there is a surplus. The budget overall of the state, they had a little bit more tax revenue than they thought they were going to have in their original budget. And right now, all indications point to that money going to two primary places, one of them being roads, which in Michigan, as you know, is obviously an ongoing issue, and the other being school safety. So right now, there's a school safety bill out there from Representative Miller. It's actually House Bill 5966, and basically it's $120 million for school safety. And I do believe that that bill has legs. It will probably pass, and it will probably be something that schools are starting to see relatively soon. Unfortunately, the way that the bill is laid out, this is for schools to add resource officers or mental health professionals to schools, which I'm very supportive of. One of the things that is unfortunate for a school district like ours is that we have already committed to liaison officers, and so therefore we don't qualify for money in that grant because they're looking for districts that don't currently have liaison officers. So we wouldn't necessarily stand to be able to qualify for any of the money because we've already been paying for a school liaison officer for a number of years.
Can we add?
We can add. So they're looking for, you know, districts that don't have them at all. But one thing that we can do, we've been talking about social workers, and that's been something that's been very successful. We could apply to have some offset in some of our funding for our mental health professionals that we would qualify for. There is a set of bills that really comes from the Larry Nassar situation out of MSU. And you know, anytime things like that happen, you'll see legislation that follows. There's a set of criminal sexual conduct bills, which is essentially going to add students who are convicted of CSC or criminal sexual conduct would become part of the mandatory expulsions for school boards. So that's going to be something that's going to be debated, talked about throughout the year. I've started asking some questions. As many of you on this board know much more than I do about it, but there are different degrees of criminal sexual conduct, and you know, so my question, of course, is it any criminal sexual conduct? Where does that line get drawn? There are some other redundant bills, such as if a student has been convicted of criminal sexual conduct, they can't ride the same bus as the student, they can't attend the same classes as the student, which are all redundant because if they have to be expelled, they wouldn't be on the bus and they wouldn't be in classes. So there's some things that they have to work out on their legislation for that. One other bill that would be fairly significant is right now there's a dual enrollment cap. This is coming out of the Senate. There's a 10-course cap on the number of dual enrollment courses that a student can take in high school, and this bill would essentially remove that cap, so kids could be taking dual enrollment courses at a very young age, and so that's something we would have to deal with. I don't think it would be something terribly challenging. The rest of the stuff in there's a lot of information that I'm not going to read all these things to you, but I wanted to provide it to you. And then if you have questions, feel free to send me an email or a text, and we'll look at that. Any questions on the legislative process or state of affairs there right now? Alrighty. I will stay in that same vein then. I'm going to let you know about something that got a lot of legs. You might have heard about this. It's called the Marshall Plan for Talent. Basically, there's several bills out here. I'm going to give you a color version so you have a little bit of an easier to read document. But basically what this is it's a group that started with the Governor's Economic Summit, and what they did is they said Michigan has a talent gap. So we have a number of jobs that are going to be there in the next 20 to 30 years, and we don't have the adequate workforce to fill those jobs. And so the Marshall Plan for Talent is essentially increasing career exploration in schools, evolving to competency-based learning and grading systems in schools, and then creating pathways for people to become certified and trained in areas that we need in our society. So I'm a very big supporter of this. One of the things that we talked about at our last meeting when we had the students come and present about their senior exit surveys was not every student needs a 4-year degree. And so what the Marshall Plan is doing is they're essentially saying instead of kids graduating high school, then going to school, what they're saying is for some kids, and for many students, it might just be that during school, they're earning work and credit towards a credential. And then maybe they graduate from high school and they actually are able to start working under some sort of credential while they're also attaining additional training. And so they're creating these pathways where it might be you've received an associate's degree or some certificate, and now if you want to take the next level, this is the tier of training you'd need. But you're earning money and contributing to society all throughout that progression versus becoming a professional student where you stay in school for 10 years. This is trying to get people into the workforce, which I think is a really good thing. So there's about $150 million right now that's being allocated to this project. The way that it's going to impact schools in particular is it's going to be looking at how do we do career exploration with our students, which, as you saw last time we met, we do a lot with that already. It's also talking about how do we create pathways for kids to get credentialed and then really support careers that actually lead to employment or jobs that are needed in our society. So that's a big deal. There's a lot of talk around Lansing about the Marshall Plan. So if you hear about it, this gives you a little more information. And then on the second page that I had given you, it has the legislation and the bills that essentially support that. So
under the Senate Bill 684, 685 that Ken Horn is sponsoring, we wouldn't be prevented from funding or support, would we, because we already have a program?
No, in fact, I've talked to Senator Horn about that, and he's one of our local legislators, and he's, I think he's got a really great vision for that. And essentially what he's saying is he just wants our kids to know what they're doing when they get, you know, we don't want to have kids that are coming out and saying, you know, well, I took the little thing in 7th grade and it said I was going to be, you know, a professional football player, and then it was the end of the career cruising, you know. So trying to expand on that and looking at a talent portfolio that actually very similar to what you saw just a few weeks ago at our last board meeting, where kids are thinking through, these are some areas where I might have some strengths. So we're trying to avoid kids going into college and, you know, not having much of a plan, and then they end up in severe debt. I was really encouraged on Monday night when we heard our seniors who were graduating, many of them graduating with high honors. A large number of them were going to Mott Community College, and they were some were going to the Honors College. It's a great way to save money and then be able to transfer those credits to a 4-year institution. So you know, it's interesting to just kind of see the change in that, and I think we're going to see more of that as college tuition rises continue. So, any other questions on that? The rest of my report I'll be talking about in bits and pieces as we get through into discussion items. So that is it.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate when you update us on the legislative efforts and
Sure.
keep us ahead of that. Okay, board subcommittee reports. Who wants to go first? Mike?
No.
Yes?
We had a special finance meeting for the purpose of selecting an audit firm for the 17-18 audit. Was held on the 14th May. The proposal presentations range from $15,400 to $26,000, and the audit was awarded to Lewis and Knopf in the amount of $15,500. The regular finance meeting was this Monday, and under old business regarding the GISD transportation discussion that's been going on for quite a while. There will be a savings of money. However, due to the shortage of bus drivers, it can't be implemented at this time, and hopefully will be implemented during the first quarter of the next school year. And the good news, the state approved the GSRP revenue for the Little Dragons renovation, an amount of $283,000. We had discussion regarding the list titled Matters for Management Consideration that were included in the 16-17 audit report. And these are opportunities for strengthening internal controls and ensuring compliance with state and federal regulations. Stacy will be speaking to that further tonight. We received the budget status, revenue expense accounts, report for review, and you have a copy in your packet. As of the 31st of May, we were at approximately a little lower than 84.55. The check register went from April the 26th to May the 30th. Checks number 264099 to 26481. There is a typo in their report. It says 61, it should be 81. There were 183 checks written for a total of $447,821. It was noted that the district website needed to be updated with the last two check registers. I checked this afternoon, and the April register is now on there, and I assume that after this meeting, the May register will be on there. We discussed the 17-18 audit schedule, and there's a pre-audit meeting scheduled for June 18th. There are no bid requests out at this time. However, the academy, the remodeling bids will be going out shortly. We had no public or committee comments. Next meeting is set for 9 July. And we adjourned at 3:42.
Any
Any
questions?
questions?
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. All right, I think Tony is up next. The building and site?
Yes. Everyone get their notes? One more's coming around.
Is that it? Do you need another?
Yes, one more.
Here you go, Mike.
Michael.
Mike, can you hand that to?
Nope, sorry.
Thank you. No problem.
We call order at 4 o'clock. First, we talked about the academy move, as Mike had mentioned. The bids are going out 6/20, or probably 1st of July. Gonna be very little construction. We don't have prints, but it's gonna be very little construction and destruction to do on the building, so it should be a short project finished in 3 weeks to a month. Then we discussed the Wool Gas and E&L partnership. It was, I think, stated the last board meeting that Rich was gonna be the lead, but Ben is gonna be the lead on that, and Rich is to advise on the bond proposal. We just wanted to make that clear. And for summer projects, RC is gonna address that in depth. And the other item of business is we're gonna sell 2 buses this summer. And
That's good. We, in the past, have spent a lot of our building and site meetings going over summer projects. And so this was kind of our big chunk of our meeting, is kind of talking about and paring that list down from the things that we can spend money on and we have the funds for, and those things that are priorities. And so I think we had a conversation at the meeting that pretty much mirrored what we've had at this table, which is, as much as we can, look at safety and security, and some of the cosmetic things, do what we can, but they fell down on the priorities list a little bit. So RC will update us in a little bit here about that. So
we had no questions from the public or the committee, and the meeting was adjourned at 5 o'clock. Next meeting will be July 9th at 4 o'clock.
Any questions for Tony?
I have one. I don't know if it's gonna be for Tony, but either Ben or probably RC. And if this is gonna be addressed in your spiel, you can just do it then. If we're selling 2 buses and we're talking about taking on more bus runs next year, is there any issues?
Yeah, I mean, cover that.
go ahead. Yeah.
Or are you gonna do it in your presentation?
I can, it's covered in the presentation, so I can cover
Okay, we'll wait till then.
It's a good question.
Anybody else? Thanks, Tony, nice job. Okay, moving on, we had, no questions from the previous meeting, and, other informational items with payment of bills. Going on to board discussion items, speaking of RC.
So so I asked RC to give us a little bit of an update on some of the work that we were gonna try and do this summer, and I think to, Mr. Engel's question, RC, you can even start there and just kind of explain, maybe just for the rest of the board as a refresher, cause this is something that, you know, I think is a sensitive topic in the last year, is about the bid process for how we sell a bus properly and follow our policy on that, and then maybe the status of our fleet and where these buses were at in terms of the, you know, we have a projection that looks at, you know, our buses and all that, so maybe you could explain that to all of us.
Yes, so Rich Brownfield actually has a sheet that projects out when a bus is due to be sold, and bus 61 and 62 fall for this year. With the alternative ed or any of that, to use those, we need a bus like bus 99, already has a lift and air conditioning on it, and they're not structurally integrity enough for that style bus, so even selling those, we'd have to purchase another bus anyways if we went to transporting ourselves. Then as far as the bid process, Rich is also the one that would be foreseeing all of that. He knows the proper websites that he has to put it on and the way he has to display it to the community.
So out of how many buses in our fleet? 28 or 26?
I think there's 28.
And this would bring us to 26, and so talk about our capacity.
We would still have 8 vacant buses that we use. When one goes down, we have 8 buses. Right now we have 10, so we'd be getting rid of 2. We'd still have 8 sitting over there. And getting rid of these 2 would also give us the space to bring in another GISD bus and bring in another revenue potential. The bus washes, the routine maintenance, all that, we make some revenue off of those from GISD as well.
So in terms of having the 8 vacant buses, if we're able to hire a few more drivers, would they be using those buses?
Yes, because right now we're doing a lot of doubling. I don't think we'd use all 8.
Okay.
It'd take 8 more drivers. I don't see that happening.
So,
If it did, then I think we'd still have 2 or 3 extra. If we filled all the runs that we need, I think we'd still have 2 or 3 extra buses for our breakdown buses, and
so how many buses do you have?
I think it's 28.
How many runs do you have?
What's that?
How many runs do you have? How many runs do you have currently, and if you had enough drivers
Well,
and you weren't doubling, how many runs would you have?
There's 16 runs
Currently?
because there's 16 drivers.
Okay.
Now we had a shortage when I came in, so I don't know exactly how many runs, because the Saturday was changed by the time I came in here. I don't know what we're supposed to be at. I
How
think
many
we're
runs
supposed
do
to
you
be
have
up to
double?
18 or 19 runs to be the ideal setup.
We're trying to get drivers.
I understand that, but we're not answering my question. We have 16 runs right now because we have 16 drivers.
Because the runs have changed. I think ideally at the beginning of the year we would want 19, but we don't have 19 drivers
Okay,
to fill
so-
those runs. So it's, what's that?
We can figure that out and answer at the next meeting,
Yeah.
if you can't answer.
Well, but we're gonna, if we're not gonna decide to sell 2 buses tonight, then if we're not gonna have an answer to the next meeting. Because if you take on the other runs, the ISD runs, are they all lift bus runs?
No.
Okay, so are you going to create, hypothetically, if we had 19 drivers, we'd have 19 runs, we'd use 19 of our 28 buses. How many runs are we gonna create if we take over the ISD runs?
Oh, well, we'd have,
For the the
we only have
GISD.
one ISD bus.
No,
We would have to order, we'd have to purchase another bus.
You're
to-
talking about getting out of tier 3
Especially.
I
special.
thought our drivers were gonna pick,
That's
the
what I'm
current
getting,
buses are
Yeah.
gonna pick
that's
up.
what I'm getting at, is
We're
how
gonna
many
pick
more
up floating
runs are we
ones.
going to create?
What, with taking it over?
If hypothetically next fall, we start doing some of the ISD runs, how many new runs are that gonna create?
I was told one, but we'd have to purchase another bus, cause you have to have a backup bus in case that one breaks
We
down.
don't need a lift on these runs.
Okay, so the special education part, I would typically work with Mary and we would set up, the number of students that we have. And then, I don't really know the run number, but I can get numbers of kids that we would have on that bus. Now, whether that's one run or two, I don't know that.
So before we sell buses, why don't we find out how many runs we're gonna have, so we know how many spare buses we have?
Even if we had 19, I mean, I'm just, the math in my head, but the 19 drivers, if that's what they need for the runs, and then 2 additional, which I think would be probably able to do, 1 or 2 for special education. If we have 28 buses, that still puts
It's
us at
still gonna be over.
21. I mean, there's still additional buses. The likelihood of needing a bus with a lift, we run into that situation as we would have a student in a wheelchair. My understanding is I can still call Chad or still call the ISD, and if I have a student, so not necessarily needing a lift bus to purchase.
I'm not talking about a lift bus.
Okay.
What I'm asking is, how many runs do we have? How many buses do we have? How many runs should we have if we weren't doubling up, if we had enough drivers? And how many new runs are you going to create next fall if you take over those ISD runs?
Okay, so I heard 19 is what we would like to have.
Okay.
And I'm thinking probably at most would be 2 runs for special education taking over the ISD. So
Okay.
that would put it at 21.
Instead of 21, so you'd have 7 spare buses hypothetically. And you wanna have 5?
I can't answer that, that's,
Yeah, and then, on the other spectrum is, I think in 2 years, or next year, he's due to buy another bus. If we follow what he
The
had
bus replacement
proposed.
plan.
So the buses are in disrepair regardless of whether or not we need them, they need to be sold.
The buses go onto a schedule, and so there's a recommended schedule, because, for example, the 2 buses that we're talking about right now, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, I looked at it a couple weeks ago, but they might have 160,000 miles on it, for
And
example.
they're 2006.
And they're a
Buses are
2006 bus, and so you look at maintenance repairs and they try and strike a balance between how much money does it cost to upkeep an older bus versus getting a newer one. And so most districts, they put a plan together, which is what which is what RC's talking about, which is, okay, you have 28 buses, you know, you're not buying any new buses this year, you're gonna offload these 2, and then next year you're gonna add a new one, so your fleet keeps, you know, you're always kinda cycling through.
Jim did a neat thing, when we had more money, Jim did a neat thing, once they got 12 years old, we replaced them.
That's what this is, the
Right.
2006.
And I'm
bus.
sure Rich is trying to do the same thing. But what I'm getting at is, I understand you wanna get rid of them, you don't want the maintenance of them. What are you gonna do if you run out of buses? Then you're doubling up runs when you don't have to, you'd have buses. You're not making any money
I
on
don't
these
think that-
buses.
Yeah, I just don't think it can happen.
Okay,
And
I don't think we'll get 26 drivers to utilize 26 buses at one time, really.
You did have a new driver next.
You're not going to, you're gonna have 21 runs with 5 extra buses. You're gonna have 5 spare buses.
Right,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, so the 5 extra would be in case one goes down.
Correct.
Is that-
Correct.
okay.
So what, I mean, the difference between 5 and 7, I understand, is 2, but if you're not getting rich selling these buses, and if they're not being used, you're really not doing anything to maintain them.
So,
So-
so for Tony's information, we sell those buses for
the minimum
8,000.
reserve is 7,000.
Yeah, so 7,000-8,000.
Yeah, I'm just trying to determine, do they age out regardless of the situation with us needing the bus? There's still not
Well, if,
useful life left in them.
if you had a spare, so for example, if we had we wouldn't do this, but if we had a newer bus that never got driven, you know, it's got low miles, that bus can drive for a long time. I mean, they're diesel engines, but typically you ride your newer buses, you know.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Tony, when we get rid of these buses, the motors are not the issues. Usually what happens is you have rotting it back at the body.
Frame.
But I mean, they're diesel motors, and we were selling them years ago. They had 125, 130,000 miles on them. Yeah, I mean, people are driving cars with that on it, not let alone a diesel motor. That's not the issue. My issue is just, I don't know that.
Capacity, do we have enough capacity for some?
Well, if you have a stroke of bad luck, and you wad up a couple buses and a couple break, you're gonna start doubling up runs. And that's if you find new drivers to do the new runs. I mean, it's a bunch of what ifs, but I don't know that it's not cost us anything to sit on 2 buses.
It costs us about $3,000 a year per bus.
For what?
Monthly routine maintenance. He still has to pull them in and go over his routine checks of all the lights.
I'm paying someone by the hour to sit there. Why does that cost me $3,000 a month?
What's
A
that?
year? How does that cost me $3,000 a year to have a mechanic look at it?
The routine maintenance of the labor doesn't cost us, right?
But he told me it's costing us about $3,000 a year for a bus just sitting there.
Based on what?
What's that?
Based on what?
Labor hours. It has to be inspected, so we're paying the state inspection fees, which I don't know what that breaks down to per bus. I can get the information on what all the breakdown is for that.
Okay. So would you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning to do this summer?
You hand out that sheet.
Yep.
Okay. So, with the Little Dragon Learning Center, we have to connect the building up to our school network. So we had a couple companies come out, and we're gonna have to run fiber to there. Number 2, we have a couple catch basins in the drains in the parking lot and the loading dock over at the middle school. So we have a company come and repair those. I don't know when we had our last playground inspection, but they should be inspected every year. So we're going to do a playground inspection. The men's locker room flooring at the cage is peeling up. I've had a couple complaints of adults tripping on the peeled up tile, so we're going to replace that. Elms and deep classroom, the kindergarten classroom bathroom floors, the tiling's peeling up, so we're going to replace that. Travis is working on quotes for the Gaines PA system. More than half of the speakers aren't working and it's outdated, so we can't replace it. We're going to upgrade the Sonatrol panels so they're connected into our network, so everything can be accessed from our phones. We can see who enters the building, when the building's occupied, not occupied, all from our phones from home or wherever. Updating the lighting in the classrooms. We've already done all the hallways and parking lots to LED lights, and the entire cage has been switched over already, so any of the savings from that we'll put towards starting to do the LEDs in the classrooms. We're going back to waxing classrooms and the hallways. We already did a couple of test spots, and I think it looks a lot better than the sealer, and it's cheaper. And the custodians like working with it better, a lot less intensive on the labor. We have to, we are using, because the 3rd floor at Mary Crapo, we just did a renovation. We replaced a lot of the doors, toilets, grab bars, sinks. So we will be using that at the new building, since it's only like 2 years old. Same with the kitchen equipment, Mary Crapo. We'll be moving all that over to the Little Dragon Learning Center. I was asked over at the media center in the high school when there's any threats, the kids using the computer lab on the lower level have to walk all the way towards where the glass is at in the hallway, walk up the stairs, and then go all the way back over to the back room where their designated bunker area is at. So on that end, by the computer lab, they want to put a ramp. Because right now, if there's a person in a wheelchair, they actually have to go all the way over to where they're accessible to be seen, pick the kid up in his wheelchair, walk them up the stairs and then go down. So we're looking at building a ramp there. We're gonna install a steam oven over at Morris. It's sitting in the warehouse. We've already had it on hand, and Mike said it should cut down on time of cooking food, and we can do vegetables, eggs, pre-cooked food in there. Just speed up the process of cooking in mornings and lunchtime. Sidewalk over at Cyrene. Anytime it rains, the catch basin that runs across the entire sidewalk is higher than the cement. So we're having that fixed, so there isn't an issue there. In the winter time, when it floods and it freezes over, it's like an ice rink right there. Just a couple weeks ago, we did some fire alarm testing at the cage, and the pickleball players didn't even know that the alarms went off. So there's no annunciators or horn strobes. There's not even a fire pole in the whole gym area. They're only out in the lobby. So I'm meeting with Simplex on June 13th to see what that'll cost to install those. Special ed office will be moved, so we'll be helping out with that. Moving playground equipment from the cage to the Little Dragon Learning Center. We'll be refinishing the cage gym floor. I did find out on that. They said it was done last year. I talked to Nikki and Ty over at the cage. They both said it was done last year.
So I know you've gotten through some of the kind of top priorities. They're kind of in ranked order, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't necessarily rank them on this one.
Oh, okay.
Because I mean, they all need to be done.
Okay. Obviously, there's quite a bit on here that you've done a great job putting the detail. One of the things that I just would like to highlight, and then let any board members ask any questions you might have about any of the items, but one of the things I would just say, night lock security, we had talked about doing that. We did get countywide consortium pricing, $35 per door, which is all great. However, we had a meeting with the state fire marshal, and I don't understand all of the ins and outs of this, but essentially the night lock metal is not UL certified. So as soon as you install it on a door, you have modified a fire rated door, which then means you have to replace all your doors, and the fire marshal would make you take it out because it's not UL certified. So it's a battle that some of the superintendents in the county are ready to fight. I'd like to just sit back and see what happens for a second, and see, how this is going to happen. But we do feel like we need to do something, but they're having a meeting with the company, and there's some legislative pressure. They could make those UL certified pretty quickly, and so if that happens, then we're all in good shape. So we're just kind of on a little bit of a holding pattern. That I just found that out this morning. So, but in terms of any of the other things, do you have any questions for RC about any of the items on the list? Obviously, there's a lot to do in the summer. It's when you get a lot of your work done. So
It's a lot of labor. A lot of it's just going to be moving items from one building to another.
it's a busy summer for you for moving.
Are we having trouble with the warehouse roof?
Are we doing what? Oh, having some work. It's work that we paid for about a month ago when we had all the leaks. They're coming back because it's still leaking. So the repairs they're doing right now is still covered under their last repair.
Okay.
Number 7, when you get that in place, that would be something that would be kind of neat if you can get it on your guys' phones. That would be something that would be worthwhile for you to funnel, if you can, to the police agencies that are coming. Because if you could literally watch that real time when you're coming to check an alarm,
That'd be great.
you could at least see who the person is, maybe where they are. Or maybe even contact you guys, where you guys could contact 911. Hey, I know you're going to that alarm, but that's Mrs. Jones. She's a 3rd grade teacher there. So that would kind of, I don't know to what, I have
been in talk with Sonatrol with changing the numbering system to match our door system on the exterior doors. So like middle school door 7, it'd come up as MS7's open. So I'm working with them, I haven't had an answer back, see if they can change every door name like I want it. So
Cool.
that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, well, that'd be nice if you know, if you could watch what was going in there live while you're coming to it, that would be nice. And what is it, an app on your phone?
Yeah, it's an app.
So the officers from Clayton and Metro, maybe even Gaines, they could all put that on their phones, so that would be kinda nice. It'd give them a little more of a tool when they go to the alarms. But I don't know if you wanna share with them, but
Yeah, no, I think that's, we wanna share as much as we can.
I don't think we're giving any deep dark secrets away.
No, and the more information and knowledge they have, which is part of why I think we've been talking about it for quite a while, about the numbering of the doors and getting the prints done so that every law enforcement agency has, okay, when they say there's an emergency and it's middle school 7, they know what that is instead of trying to figure out where in the world it is. And I like the signs that you put in, they're big and they're boxy, and that's helpful.
And the prints are done too. Mary's working up folders to get to the police departments and the fire department.
They're
Yeah.
nice, and we've got them on our computers from 911, but while that's really neat, you can't drive to an alarm and, you know, it's like us telling everyone not to text. I can't sit and look at a schematic on a computer, oh, he's in this hallway or whatever. You know, and that's what I've had that argument with 911. In theory, it's great. But do I call timeout in the parking lot? Okay, hang on, bad guy. I need to check my map. You know, I mean, it's about the most unrealistic thing. You can't look at it when you're driving. So your numbering there and that alarm system, if it can actually, you know, if you can watch it, that would be really neat for us coming. Because now I can watch it on my phone, and I can carry my phone once I get on foot. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, RC.
Thank you very much. Okay, school finance and budgeting update and process.
So each year we do several updates and amendments to the budget, and I asked Stacy to give us a little bit of an update on the process, where she's at in the general scheme of things. I think you're gonna be seeing another amendment next week, or next board meeting. And we have our truth and taxation hearing this month and several other things, so I'm gonna just have her come up and give us a little insight into that.
Yes, so I'm currently working on our proposed 18-19 budget and our final revised 17-18 budget. I will be providing them to you guys for board approval on June 20th. Along with presenting the proposed 18-19, I'll also be presenting the tax levy, truth and taxation information. This meeting has to be separate from your regular board meeting, so it will be held at 6:15 on June 20th, right before the regular board meeting, and that's a requirement. Michigan law requires a board to adopt its budget before the beginning of the fiscal year. Budget adoption legislation, Public Act 40 of 1995, permits the school district to eliminate the truth and taxation process if it takes certain steps as part of the budget adoption process. A taxing unit such as the school district may levy the full authorized operating millage without following the truth and taxation process if the taxing unit complies with section 16 of the Uniform Budgeting Act, which we will be doing. Basically, in summary, a school district may levy its full millage rate without going through the truth and taxation hearing process by satisfying the following requirements. We must post 6 calendar days prior to the hearing a public notice of the hearing containing the following information: the time, date, and place of the hearing, the location where the budget is available for public inspection, and we must have in boldface 11 font. It has states in our newspaper posting, the property tax millage rate proposed to be levied to support the proposed budget will be subject of this hearing. So that has to also be in our newspaper hearing. And then I will present those together. I brought our 2018 L4028 here for signature. Hopefully Stacy can get that, or Carrie signed it tonight. Hopefully Stacy's gonna sign it tomorrow or very soon. It is due to the county by July 1st because we levy summer taxes. So as soon as I get Stacy's signature, I'll be getting that to the county ahead of schedule before it's due. And I'll be presenting that with the proposed 18-19 budget. So so it'll be a proposed budget hearing and a, truth and taxation hearing, and the 17-18 final revised will be submitted at your regular board meeting for approval. So you'll be approving 2 budgets at the next meeting. Another update was we have looked at what went in the audit last year as recommended suggestions, and Marilyn and I are making sure that we're getting those all corrected. We had a suggestion of bank recs and having a separation of duty on that. We have done that, and we have another person doing that, so Marilyn is no longer doing the bank recs. Another suggestion in our audit last year was that our budget variance was too big. We had a budget variance of $730,000 last year from our final amended 16-17 budget to where we actually ended, and they're saying that's too big of a variance. I am 100% confident my final revised budget will not be $730,000 off from where we end. There will be some variance because the budget is a guess, but it won't be approaching $1 million. There was another suggestion in our audit from last year about our, the board has adopted the uniform grant guidance policies that have been updated per the federal government. However, the district had not updated the procedures to match the policy. So that was also in our budget. I have printed off, MSBO does template procedures that align with the policies that Neola presented to the board. So we will be updating our procedures before the auditors step in the door so that we also take care of that suggestion. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Is there a special cause for the larger variance, one thing, or a lot of little stuff that larger of a variance?
I think the budget had been rolled over and nobody was really looking at what was actually happening necessarily. They were looking at some big ticket items, but there were budgets in there that had like a $50,000 budget and nothing had been spent there. That wasn't adopted or even looked at. So when in my final revise that I've already been looking at for weeks, I'm going through every line item and looking what is my budget, where am I at today, how much more do I think I'm gonna spend, and I'm projecting it all out line by line. So I'm not skipping over any of those budget items. Hard revenue to budget is how much actual tax revenues you're gonna receive, because there can be a lot of delinquent taxes that you don't get, even though we've levied it. So I'm gonna project that out to how much we received last year from now until the end of June, and how much I think we'll project this year, and I'll decrease the tax revenue accordingly. That's really all I can say. Is I don't think prior to this, before having a full-time businessman, able to spend the time to look at every single line and project out that budget. So things just got rolled up and submitted, and that I wasn't here, so that would be my best guess of what happens. But I know we shouldn't be approaching $1 million variance, and I'm 100% confident we won't be approaching that this year on our final revise. So.
Any tax tribunals?
No, not as of right now. We don't have any.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good news.
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to the staffing process. I'm assuming that's you, Don?
Yep, so just want to make sure everybody's kind of aware we are in the midst of the staffing process. We have a couple different groups, and one thing that I updated you on at our last meeting was the fact that we have our student support professionals, or our aides, that in the past we have kind of inherited. For example, a student might have a one-on-one and then that student moves on, but the aide stays behind. And over time, what we found is we did an analysis comparing ourselves to other schools that have similar demographics and similar staffing structures, that we were significantly overstaffed in our student support professional pool, and we were also underpaid. So we have worked to correct that. So our principals have all been interviewing. We posted all of the aide positions. They're actually called SSPs, not to be confused with AFSCME aides. The AFSCME aides are a different group. So the SSPs, we changed a couple of the positions around. We added some opportunities for some increased hours that met the district's needs, and also increased their pay. So we increased their pay while right-sizing the group. So obviously, as they've gone through those interviews, there are some people that did not end up making the cut for those that earned those positions. But there nonetheless still are positions out there, because we've now also followed up with some caregiver postings, because now that we're doing our, and those are AFSCME positions, now that we're doing our daycare and early learning stuff at each building, there's an additional caregiver or two at each building. So those have been posted as well, so there's an opportunity for them to pick one of those up. And then the teachers have been going through their staffing process with the administrators as well. We have 6 open positions right now at the middle school, which include 3 ELA teachers. We have a math teacher or 2, and I believe we also have a social work opening there, I think. So several opportunities there for people that will be interviewing. Starting soon. We wanted to try and get those posted as soon as possible, because typically your top talent coming, into the workforce is going to be looked at. The early bird gets the worm on that. So we're going out and we're going to start interviewing as early as this next week. And so hopefully by the July board meeting, we'll have a handful of teachers, for you to be able to bring on board. So that's where we're at with staffing. Just wanted to make sure everybody kind of knew we were going through that. And any questions about that?
So you said it was social work at the middle school? Or social?
We have 3 ELA positions. I believe we have, I said social work. I should have said social studies.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
Social studies, sorry about that.
That
I do think I
answers my
misspoke.
question.
And a couple math positions as well.
I just wanted to know, based on the legislation, if we needed to be prudent about the timing,
Yeah.
in case they only allowed us to hire folks that were new.
That's great.
for that. Okay.
For sure, something to think about. So the last discussion item there is superintendent evaluation, and we don't need to have a big conversation about it right now, but I do need to have a mid-year review, which is something that I'd like to do at our next board meeting. So just to kind of give you a heads up, our next board meeting is going to be a little busy, because you're going to have the truth and taxation hearing. We're going to have a budget update, and so that's going to take a bit. Stacy's going to have those budgets for you to look over. I'll try and keep the rest of the agenda light. You will have a number of potential opportunities to hopefully approve a couple contracts, and we're working on that, and we'll be talking about that in closed session today. And then also the opportunity to do a mid-year review just for my evaluation. So just wanted to make sure you're kind of thinking in those terms. And then we can kind of go from there. So
Do you anticipate doing what you did at the year-end evaluation, giving us kind of an update of what's been going on? You keep us very...
I do, yeah,
Well,
I do plan on
informed,
giving you
but-
kind of a self-reflection on the year, kind of some ups and downs in my performance. And then we can kind of talk through that and look at how things are going. My contract is one that is a little bit interesting, because my contract was kind of started in midway through the year. I started in January, so I would like to request that, from the board, that you would consider this summer granting me an extension on my contract. I'm not asking for any additional increase in money or salary at all. I just would like to have that opportunity to get on a June schedule. I've been here a year and a half, so it gives maybe an opportunity to just extend my contract length out a little bit without, I'm not asking for any additional compensation, but just to have the additional contract would give me a peace of mind in being here. So. Yep.
Does that mean you like us?
I like it here.
Oh,
It's
good.
good. It's a good place to be.
So we didn't talk like another 4.5 years?
When did your contract expire?
Well, it was a 3.5-year contract, so I'm 2 years away right now, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
When you want it to cycle for June?
It'd be nice to cycle.
So
them.
you either want 18 months or 30 months.
Correct.
He wants to be able to roll over
Right.
Yeah.
in
So-
mid-year.
Well, pick one.
Yeah. I'll come ask him.
Either way, I mean.
Yeah. But yeah, I should. That would be something we could discuss, obviously, in my mid-year review as well.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you. All right, moving on, we have, board action items, the Chartwell's K through 12 food service contract renewal.
One thing I'll say, this is a pretty standard procedure, but one thing I will just say is a little bit of a side. I should have brought it up in my superintendent's report. Michael has been going out and securing a variety of grants that are not general fund dollars. They're not dollars that are impacting our budget at all. He's secured a grant. He is going to be setting up a mobile food cart at Winchell Park in the village of Cyrene all summer long, so kids can eat breakfast and lunch that don't have the ability to get solid quality food, and that's all grant funded. So that's pretty impressive. It's kind of a neat thing that sometimes we don't get those things out there, and so just a neat opportunity on top of the grant funding that he's secured to be able to offer after school meals for kids that are in sports and those other things. So that's a pretty spectacular thing. I've been very impressed talking with cooks, talking with some of the kitchen managers, and parents and kids even. I went and met with the high school students, and they'll be pretty honest with you about the food. And you know, they always would like to see more offerings and things like that, but they say it's a big improvement. So I think it's been a good project. Yeah.
But he was on 5 o'clock news tonight talking
Was he?
about fresh food there at Siren, and they had Michael on.
Oh, did
Yeah.
they? He was a movie star today.
Yes.
So that's good.
That program, that summer program is amazing,
Mhm.
amazing.
They're school food, so.
And it says all kids, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if they live here or not.
Yeah, it's going to be set up there. It's intended to be for the village kids.
Right,
you
but
know,
if
yeah.
somebody comes,
Mhm.
okay. All right, so I need a motion.
So move. Support.
Okay, Brian, Tony, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thank Michael for us. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, he's doing a really
Done a
nice job.
nice
Pretty
job.
fortunate to have him. It's been a big upgrade.
Has everybody met him?
I have,
Michael?
no.
I have not,
Yeah,
I was
Mike.
just getting the
Would it be
lowdown.
possible, I know he's not our employee, but
Yeah.
could we in the future have him come?
Yeah,
in
that'd be
and
good.
talk?
Not at our next board meeting.
Yeah,
No,
but-
we're not.
No, just some other time,
Yeah.
just come and talk a little bit. Or
Yeah,
we get
that'd
to
be
know
great.
him.
Maybe give you an update in the summer
Yeah.
or something. That'd be good.
He's a smart guy, he's a good guy. Okay, comments. If anybody in the audience would like to address the board, please stand and state your name.
They already did.
Anybody? Okay, well, that's new. Okay, let's move on. Comments or questions from the board? Anybody? Thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to all you do. I know this is a really crazy time. Very busy time. I know that takes a lot of time away from your families. When we see more of you than we see of our families, we know that means that your families are missing out too. So thank you so much.
It's a team effort.
Appreciate that. All right, anybody else? All right, we have the need to go into closed session, for the purpose of, let me just read it. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education go into closed session for purposes of considering a complaint against an employee, OMA 15.268, Section 8A, and for strategy related to negotiations, OMA 15.268, Section 8C. I need a motion.
So move.
Support.
Ryan and Mike and Joanne, could you do a roll call, please?